I find joy in it, but the demand on me, the pressure on me, the expectation. I'm expected to be the superhero. I'm expected to be the perfect one. I'm not even giving room to err or to make mistakes. If I make mistake, oh my God, daggers and swords and darts gets thrown at me. I've given everything. I've given so much. And anytime I try to make my feelings known, to really speak on that emptiness or pain that I feel inside, I'm told, oh, everyone is suffering. You're not the only one going through it. See, if everyone should talk about their own, you know your own is small. And then suddenly I go into that silence, to the state of silence, because nobody wants to listen to me. Nobody wants to give me that shoulder to cry on. Hello, good evening, good evening. It's a beautiful Saturday in the beautiful province of Prince Edward Island here in Canada, and my name is Rosemary Henriese. How are we all doing? On the Young Women and Wives with Burdens and Blessings discussion platform, today we are celebrating the International Women's Day. Yes, you would say, oh, how come you're celebrating this on the 7th of March? Well, we are commemorating it against tomorrow. Every 8th of March, globally, women are celebrated. And this year, we will be discussing on the topic, Give to Gain. That is the theme of discussion of the International Women's Celebration for this year, 2026. And on the Young Women and Wives with Bodies and Blessings discussion platform, what better time to look at what a woman stands for, who a woman is, and how much she gives. So today, we'll be having with us our beautiful speaker, Jasonique Moss. She'll be looking at the topic, Give to Gain. Healing the woman who gives. When we came in, I was actually had an intro, a voice note that I had made earlier, relating and expressing the frustration and the pain of the woman who gives. A woman is such a beautiful creation. And I said in the video, I said, I am so grateful I'm a woman. A woman is an embodiment of so many gifts. A woman is loaded with so many gifts to give to her world. But what happens when she gives too much? What happens when she is not able to draw the line or the boundary between giving and then gradually she snow dives into pain? Tonight, I'm going to be bringing on our speaker this night, and she talked to us on this topic. Overwhelmed and shaken by it because for someone who has been a woman all her life, I can say to you, welcome, Jazz.
Hi, how are you?
Good. And don't bother about not seeing me. It's Facebook technicality. We
Okay.
are live and everyone else is seeing us, but both of us, we can't see ourselves. Thank you so much for doing this. You
Oh,
know,
thanks for having me.
the topic we are looking at this night is a very sensitive topic, because a woman is the burden and expectation laid on a woman to always be the one to give. She's the one, she carries everyone else. She does everything. Yet no one carries her. So how do we bring ourselves to actually ask for help? How do we bring ourselves as women to actually, you understand, not just carry people, but also give room and opportunity to be what, to be supported, to be helped. So this night we're talking about the topic, give to gain, that's healing the woman who gives. So without taking much of our time, I'd like you please to take over, Jasonique. Please proceed. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Rosemary. I figured I'd just jump, it's a big topic, and when you shared it with me, I was like, oh, like what direction do I take this from? And so I was like, okay, let me look at the questions, let me see like where the interest or the key points are, and so I'll go from based on that. And so I'd like to open up or begin with talking about what have women historically been expected to give, and what is the cost associated with that. And so throughout history, I think we can all agree that women have been expected to give their time in relation to the hours spent supporting relationships and caretaking of their environments. And within the home, this time can usually manifest in the form of um, cleaning to cooking to serving elders, or having the majority of the child rearing child rearing expectations put on them, in addition to just the affairs related to the day-to-day household caretaking. And in addition to this, like, it brings to mind just the thought of how women are expected to be the bearers of knowledge, or the knowledge keepers responsible for preserving culture. And so all of these terms I find fall under what I would call as like the invisible labor. And it's a term defined as the often unpaid, unrecognized, and disproportionately female-led efforts that keeps homes and workplaces running. And this invisible labor is not only just actionary, but it includes the mental and emotional and also physical tasks. So again, other examples would be planning, scheduling, cleaning, and providing support, that are really included in, job descriptions, if a job, or, rarely talked about or rarely seen by folks who are not engaging in this kind of work. And, after listing some of the things that where we've been historically expected to give, it brings my mind to the cost of these commitments, and they often fall within the category of reduced time, and whether it's, for paid employment, education, rest, or leisure. But it also includes, a reduced sense of self, as one's identity can become defined mainly by the roles that they fulfill. And so I feel like a lot of mothers can resonate with this, a lot of partners and caregivers can also resonate with that. And so instead of having their personal aspirations or interests be explored, there's less time for that. So that's also a cost of this, invisible labor. And because of this, there's also the cost of having, reduced autonomy when it comes to your life opportunities. Too often we see, for example, I'll use mothers because I'm a mother myself. Like, too often we see situations where a mother will delay her studies or delay what her career goals what she would like to achieve for herself career wise, for the sake of, wanting to show up in the best way possible for those around them. And for the women that do work, another term that I've come across is that they can experience what we call the double burden. And for this is someone that is working a full-time job, a paid job, and then going home to do the unpaid work. And so from that, I started to kind of think about the costs and think about the expectations, and lean into why do so many women struggle to receive help. And the first thing I have on my list is societal functions and expectations. So for women, specifically the Black women, as I identify as that myself, you have the terms strong and independent that are like often tied on to that. And the expectations around this identity creates a situation where we have learned self-reliance. That is what we find takes center stage. And this could be the result of a repetition of patterns. If you've grown up witnessing, the matriarchs within your lineage taking on the big chunk of that work. Um, and so, or sort of, for example, like being the breadwinner, or also, denying themselves in order to show up for others. And from this, I started to dig a little deeper to say, okay, well, why don't we talk about that? And that is the taboo that's attached to the sharing of those struggles. Whereas, um, it places you in a vulnerable position and can potentially be used for harm. So a lot of people shy away from that. Another reason as to why women, struggle to ask for help is because of the social conditioning that we have, where they are seen as the automatic, caregiver. And I think I spoke a little bit about this just then. And it's deeply ingrained in us. It's a socialization that we hear when growing up of like, oh, the women take care of the household and the children. And while that is true, that's not the only task that um, women are expected to take on. There's a lot more that women are capable of doing. And so in that, I'm trying to like keep track on my notes and not go too, of course. Um, but in that, young girls are taught from a young age that caring for others is a part of what it means to be a good woman. And that is not entirely true. And over time, we see it becomes internalized. And so like we automatically have an innate, I don't want to, I guess I could say like ability to like jump to that when that's not all that there is to us. And then lastly, I'd like to identify that sometimes help is associated with a cost. And so in this world that we live in, everything carries a cost. And if you're already coming from a place of, depletion, the perceived cost that you're expecting to be attached to help can sometimes prevent you from reaching out in the first place. And so there's the anticipated cost of criticism or conflict, where some women avoid asking for help because of past experiences of having delegated a task only for it to be done incorrectly, and that resulting in frustration, and then them having to go back and still do the work. In other situations, there's the cost of being accused of nagging, or the cost of arguments that can arise from these responsibilities that were originally, put on this individual. And I could also lean further and say, because of, the patriarchy, I could mention the patriarchy here, like asking for help isn't necessarily always seen as an option. And over time, this creates habits and expectations and identities that make delegating or accepting help psychologically difficult. Even when someone is overwhelmed, like that just it doesn't come across original, like as a concept or as an option for them. And so in thinking about what it's like to navigate or to be in this space of overwhelm due to helping, um, the question came up of like, what happens emotionally when a woman never pauses? And so on the topic of what happens from operating from that overwhelmed sense of state, there are studies that have shown that the brain can enter a chronic overload state that affects identities, relationships, and mental health. And so essentially, the brain experiences a sort of like rewiring where you can shut down emotionally as a coping mechanism. And because of this, you can experience chronic exhaustion as a result of that constant stress cycle. This can feel like mental fatigue, irritability, reduced patience, reduced appetite, feeling overwhelmed just by small tasks. And in this, there's this loss of self that can come up. And, I feel like I'm going on, but like there's also
Go ahead.
hidden
Go ahead.
resentment because expressing anger is difficult and often unwelcomed and poorly received in some cases. And then there's also this loneliness that gets attached to it, which then places someone at risk for anxiety and depression as a result of, just operating from a burnt out place. And I feel like this is a really good time to mention The Body Keeps the Score. It's a book by Bessel von der Kirkhope. I think I might be saying that wrong, but the book expands about how our experiences are stored within our body, and they can manifest as a plethora of things. This can be soreness, pains, bloating, tightness in the chest, and it's all based on traumatic experiences. And I use the word traumatic experience because a lot of experiences that we have, not all of them, but like a lot of certain niche experiences that we can have, they at the time we may not recognize the trauma attached to it, but the body does, and it counts. It all adds up. And I find, like, I mean, to go a little bit deeper in that, we find for women often that trauma is stored within the hips. So like tightness in the hips or like weak backs, like it's a, I guess, bodily representation of what is happening in our day to day. And so with losing yourself at risk, this feeling can be described as, I have described it in the past as being on autopilot, feeling burnt out to the point where you just kind of go into autopilot mode for everything. And, after time, if not dealt with, this can result in self-destruction that can ultimately cause harm to yourself or others. And so from that, I was like, okay, we need to reel it in a bit. Like, how do we get over this hump now that we've identified kind of like what it is we may be experiencing as a result of, giving without taking a pause for ourselves? I was like, okay, there needs to be some type of balance. And in trying to find the balance, the question came about of how when does giving become self-erasure instead of generosity? And so like women are natural givers, and I love that women have that trait associated with them, but at the same time there's a fine line between self-erasure and generosity. And so when the cost, like I guess my answer to this would be, when the cost to you outweighs the impact of the action, or in this case the give, and you find yourself ignoring or suppressing your own needs, that's the difference. And so it comes down, like it boils down to kind of like, if you're feeling, oh, I was going to add this last part, but if you find yourself ignoring or suppressing your own needs, identities, and limits, then that's self-erasure. And if giving feels like an expectation and not a choice, then you know. And if you're feeling limited to a role or unable to express your feelings, again, that's self-erasure. That's it. That's, you're not doing much generosity at that point. And so in defining the word generosity, it's seen as the quality of being kind and generous, and the quality or fact of being plentiful or large. Based on the qualities of self-erasure just mentioned, the two contradict. As one nourishes, with generosity, it nourishes the relationship with others and yourself, while self-erasure is just harming the relationship with self and also others, because again, you're not showing up fully for the individuals that you're looking to serve. And also stop me at any point if I'm talking too fast. When I get
Yeah,
in, I start to
go
like
ahead.
gap. And
Go ahead.
so, and I'm just gonna take a pause and drink some water. Okay, so in real trying to take a few steps back of once identifying, okay, this is where the line of generosity is, and this is where on the other side is self-erasure. I wanted to backtrack to say, okay, what safety barriers can be put in place to try and protect that sense of self in the means of giving, because the giving doesn't stop. Like I don't think the giving ever does, nor do I want it to, but we want to be able to give from a place of having our cup full as well. And so um, I had the like kind of, how can boundaries protect generosity? That was the question that kind of came up, because the next thing is boundaries. Boundaries would need to be put in place in order to protect self. And so what happens is that boundaries allow for personal time and for safety of identity, where rest, recovery, and self-perseverance can take place. I find that boundaries take away the obligation that can often be attached to things, and it replaces it with choice. So adding autonomy back in there. So for example, like a very plain example of this, and this is coming from a recovering people pleaser, as I like to say. This is going to be a simple example, and I'll break it down some more further, but this can look like having boundaries in a situation of giving can look like you committing 2 hours of your time for a function that may be 3 hours. You're still able to show up for yourself and for the individuals that you're looking to show up for. And so, although simple, I find that I benefit from being reminded, or we all can benefit from being reminded of our sense of autonomy as someone, again, like I said, that tries to do everything. And so boundaries give us room to set up as we please in order to host healthy relationships that are reciprocal. And in some cases, it allows you to even identify if a situation is not something that you want to give to, because we're allowed to change our minds as well. And then my last point to that is that boundaries, if practiced, what's the word I want to use? Like if practiced, what's that word? If practiced with, I guess, like good balance, essentially, like that is what prevents burnout. Because again, like I said, the life doesn't stop, the giving doesn't, but you get to decide how that goes. And so when it comes to like rebuilding your identity beyond the roles that you fill, because boundaries are one thing, and it takes a step to get there, because it's hard to say no, or to say yes and, or yes but, that it's hard to get there. So what are some things that we can do with ourselves to kind of prepare ourselves to be in a place where we feel as though we can speak up about those things? And so in looking at rebuilding, how do we rebuild? The first thing that comes to mind is rest. So what does rest look like for the woman who is, strong, for whomever she's being strong for? And I like to say that it goes beyond the primitive measures of like saying no, maintaining boundaries, and planning ahead. But it's knowing that you have the permission to be imperfect. No one's expecting you to show up as, you know, all that, like everything all in one. You don't have to do that. And so for that, like when it comes to outside of rest and saying no, I find that investing in yourself does a whole lot of good. And you can invest in yourself in a multitude of ways, not just like, I don't say that same, because it's normally attached with like, okay, well, money is coming with that. That's something we don't have. I don't think any of us have a lot of. And so what does it look like to invest in your hobbies? What does it look like to explore that niche interest that you have? And I mean, I hope it doesn't come off as superficial, but investing in how you look, like investing in yourself, make yourself feel good. I like to say, look good, feel good. And I believe in that. But I say it because it's all a means of pouring back into yourself. And so rest, what do I have here? Rest from, oh, this is another point. So yes, after pouring back into yourself, it's important to identify when you need a break as well. And so when I look at it, or when I think about it some more, I think of, okay, what does rest realistically look like? Because again, like life, the hustle and bustle of life does not stop. But what we can do is possibly give ourselves rest from certain responsibilities or certain kinds of emotional labor. And, where someone else can take over. And again, as a parent myself, as a single parent myself, like, what can that look like to lean on my community? Because it takes a village to raise a child, and no one can do it alone. And so what does it look like to, just slowly allocate tasks that you don't have to do in order to give yourself that small break? And so, what does it look like to not be? And for anyone that's watching this, I'd implore them to ask themselves, what does it look like if I am not the listener today? What does it look like if I'm not the immediate fixer today? What does it look like if I'm not mediating today? Because we all do these things to default and we don't think about it in the moment. It's very easy to get caught up in these things. But what does it look like to intentionally take a pause in these things in our lives? And so from there, after sitting with those questions, definitely think about how it applies to your life, and do spend that time with yourself. And in that, you're reconnecting with yourself, because again, you're making space for yourself in your mind. And whatever is a thought is 10 times likely to manifest as an action. And so it's just putting that muscle to work. And I'd also like to use this opportunity to distinguish the difference between self-care, self-soothing, and self-regulation, because this is also something that, because after you're allocating tasks as to how can I, get more rest, it falls into kind of like your day-to-day practices. What are you doing on your everyday? And so, self-care, I know people tag it as like, take a bubble bath, like go to the spa. Like that's not accessible to everybody. And so it's asking yourself, like, what can I do? What is something that can be built into my practice, built into my everyday, that I can do during good times, bad times, that will help take care of me? And so, for example, mine is, reading my Bible, like waking up in the morning and reading my Bible, getting that word in first thing in the morning to get myself, and then stretching, because I find that moving my body helps open up, anything that may be trapped, any soreness, any muscle ache. It starts me off on a good note. And it's not something that I get to do every single day, because life happens. You run late, you wake up late, things happen. But those are two practices for sure that I know is a part of my self-care, because it keeps me feeling well. And for anyone, like self-care could be anything. And like, even down to like, if I had to expand a bit more about my self-care, that includes going to church for me, like being amongst fellow believers, and, feeling strong in my faith is something that is a part of my self-care. And so I would implore anyone to spend some time figuring out what makes you feel like you, and introducing that into as an act of self-care for yourself. Now, when it comes to self-soothing, I find this is the habits that we cling on to that may not be necessarily the best for us, but they help soothe us, and they're very temporary fixed. So for a lot of people, this can be a means of escapism through, scrolling, watching movies, but again, you have to remember it's that temporary fix. And it's something I wouldn't say completely diminish. There's, everything within with limits, I'd like to say. But it's nice to have, I guess, if you need something very quick and fast to help you get regulated, that is something that you can try.
Mhm.
Um, and then when it comes to self-regulation, this is what you want to do. This would be the tools that you would like to have when you're operating from a dysregulated state. This can be, for a lot of people, the common thing that comes to mind is taking deep breaths, or like I have this one called 5 finger breathing. Like I'm doing it right now. It's just deep breath in, deep breath out. Is again, it's very small, but it's something that can help you regulate your nervous system. You identify that you're operating from a place of dysregulation, because if you're not good for yourself, you can't be good for anyone else. And like the tools that I mentioned, there's so many tools that you can add to your toolkit, on not just under self-care, but under self-soothing and self-regulation, that are like healthy things that can help you along the way. Because again, I keep on repeating this, but life does not stop happening. Like you're not guaranteed a day where you're not getting stressed out or being asked to do something or to give in a certain way. Bless you. Um, and so the tools range, and I'd encourage everyone to spend some time looking into different tools that can be added to their toolkit to help them. Uh, yeah, I had like a little example of like some programming that I've done in the past where we've explored alternative modalities of healing, and in that we had music therapy, sound baths, usage of essential oils. If did I mention art? Like art therapy, like there's so many means of adding to your toolkit, and again, it's very individualized, and so you have to find what works for you. Um, yeah, and so I had some more questions given to me that I'd like to expand on. And I'm almost done talking.
Um, Hi, Jan.
Yeah.
I want to say that you you your discussion and your teaching this evening has been very in depth. I know that this is a global platform where we have women all over the world, and you know, uh, I we usually encourage that everyone goes back and listen again. I really appreciate what you have shared with us this night, and there's something that you kept referencing, and that's the fact that everyone can attain healing, from the level, which a woman can attain healing from the level where she is. So it doesn't really have to be, expensive and all that. Please, I want to cut you, so that I can go into the question. I want to go into the question, but before I go into the question, for everything that you have, shared with us this night, very concise, very clarity laden. Um, we've as a woman, I have, I practically came into the world, and I, like you said, our our mothers, they took up roles that were, for me, too much of a body, that demanded too much of them for both their mental health, their physical health, and everything. And while you were discussing, you mentioned how the body remembers. The body remembers. So, and when you mentioned that there's some of the stress actually goes back to the hips, and then we have the clothing and everything. I'm like, wow, I need to go back and do
Yeah.
a lot of
Do
searching
all
and
we
asking
can. Yeah.
and asking my body some very critical questions. But no, now my first question is this. This question is not here, but I want to ask. The as a woman, we are quick to feel guilty. We're quick to feel guilty about what we are not doing. Because a woman has that kind of like made her life look like she's meant to give and give and give, and she's not. If she's not giving, she's not impacting. Oh, I am meant to give. But I want to give you an example of myself. It got to a time. You know, there was there got a time in my life that I just needed that succor. I needed that shoulder to rest on, because I felt, oh, I've been the wonderful wife, I've been a wonderful mother, and you know, I just needed to feel, you know, relaxed. I just need to be taken care of.
Yeah.
But you know, everywhere I look around me, everyone is depending on me.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day, a day came, I took a very drastic decision. And I said to myself, I said, I don't care, even if the world is falling.
Mm-hmm.
And I changed the list and I said, I'm going to take care of Rosemary first. I'm going to take care of Rosemary first. I'm not interested whether the children are screaming off their heads or whatever. And as soon as I did that, you know, I began to feel guilty. I began to feel guilty. I felt I was not a good mother. I felt I was not, you know, I was not doing the right thing. So the question is, what is it that makes a woman, you know, find it very difficult to put herself first? You know, you mentioned that you're a
Yeah.
woman, you have to learn to put. Why? Why do women find it so difficult to put themselves first? Why?
I think that's the case, and that's a great question. I think that's the case because that is, I mean, I hate to be that person, but it's what society has been feeding. Like society growing up, I could vividly recall, and I feel like a lot of people could resonate with this. You grow up being told that you are only useful based on what you're able to give, and so if you're not in that position of giving, you automatically assume, or you automatically believe that, okay, well, I'm not useful. Like I'm not. That's where the guilt starts to creep in because I'm not performing. Therefore, I'm not, fulfilling my purpose as dictated by society. And so, that's simply put where it comes. It comes from, you know, I'm trying to find another way to not say society, but it comes from that conditioning of believing that your usefulness is what gives you purpose here. And so, I empathize, I sympathize with you, and I do empathize with you that you had that experience of experiencing guilt once you reach that point of being fed up, and like it's very hard to break out of that mold because it's you having to go against what you've been told for very very long, or what you've been growing up hearing. Um, but it's important to know that, how do I word this? Like there is no obligation to perform. Like that's not the purpose as to why you were put here on this earth, and so yeah, the guilt comes kind of like automatically, and there's no exact way to kind of like get rid of it, but it is a matter of you having to retell yourself the truth.
Thank you so much. Thank you so, so much. Um, I have comment from a man. No, sorry, I'm kind of like
Oh,
Nigerian in my
Trevor,
accent.
yes, I can see the comment.
Trevor
Hey,
L.
Trevor.
Clement. He said, "This is interesting. Thank you so much, Trevor. You know, I just had to read it because it's coming from a man." And
Okay.
he kind of gave a narrative of how, you know, what he observed with his grandma and his mom.
Hmm.
And really, and with his wife too. We really want to say thank you, Mr. Trevor, for your kind words. Thank you so much. He said at the same time, since I grew up on both farms, my dad and grandfather worked full-time job, but did outside work also, starting with going to feed the animals and all that. Yes. Thank you so much. Another question. Thank you so much. I don't know. I have so many questions there here. One question I want to ask is that it said, why do okay, I think I've asked that. I said, in what ways can a woman learn to receive love, care, and support without her feeling that she must first earn it through sacrifice?
Mm, okay. Okay, read it one more time for me. Let me take it in.
Okay, I said, in what way can a woman feel that in what way can she sorry in what way can a woman learn to receive love, care, and support without feeling that she must first earn it through sacrifice?
Mm. Oh wow, that's a hard one because you got to unlearn a lot of things that, again, you have to get rid of that performance type situation out of your head.
Mm.
And I think I I I'm like hesitant to say this because I don't think that everyone should have to reach a point for them to recognize something. But I want to say, like, no one is going to create the space for you to get the help. Like, no one's going to do that for you. And that's like asking for deliverance or like praying for something without creating the room for the blessing to come. And so, like, I would hope that a lot of women don't need to reach that point of depletion in order to say, okay, I need help. But it's going back to, I guess, like that communal way of living or how you would have perceived things when you were younger of like, okay, well, everybody chips in, everybody adds, everybody gives, and therefore I should I should be able to release, the associated shame or fear or guilt that is attached to asking for help. Like before it gets to a time where you are forced to ask for help. Like I'd say, present the challenge of encouraging everyone to kind of unlearn those unhelpful ideas around help in order to engage more freely with it. And knowing that, like, as a collective, if we are all doing our part to give, then equally everyone should be getting. And so the same, attaching that same mindset to how help is given, freely give help and therefore you will freely receive help. And so yeah, that's a tough one because there's no quick fix to getting rid of that
Yes.
way of thinking. But yeah.
Thank you so much. When you mentioned unlearning, I said, wow, that is actually it, because we have truly been conditioned to believe that we are without us, nothing can work.
Mm,
Or everything would go down the drain if we are not there.
yep.
Thank you so much for that. Um, I want to ask, or let me just say, what does true healing look like for a
Mm,
woman who has spent years of her life pouring into others, but has never had anyone pour into her?
mm. What does true healing look like?
Yeah,
For someone especially that again has been burnt from feeling as though they've
yeah,
never gotten that true help, I'd say the first step of healing is identifying that you were on that journey, that you were on that path, because a lot of people spend their time running away from even acknowledging where they are at. But I think the first step in that is identifying that, okay, I am on this healing journey, and also understanding that the healing journey, there's no end, like there's no like start and finish. It doesn't work that way. Life doesn't work that way. um, but it's just this ongoing path that gets shaped by our experiences. And while we don't have control over those experiences, we do have control over how we walk on this path. And so, for someone that has been badly burnt, after acknowledging that they are on that journey, I think that in itself is that is the thing, that is like be acknowledging that and then doing what you can to add to your toolkits to help your path be easier. That is what I think true healing can be like. That's what I think it can be defined as, outside of the hardships that someone may have experienced, because again we don't have control over those things that would have happened to us. And again, like not again, but even going a little bit further into that, if you realize that you are on this healing journey and that there are individuals along this path who are not helping you along the way, or not positively pouring or adding onto that, helping you along that path, then what does it look like to pivot? Because you're allowed to pivot, you're allowed to change directions, you're allowed to change your mind.
yeah.
What does it look like to explore what different people within your network can, or receiving help from different people within your network can look like? What does it look like to rebuild a network and start from scratch once if you realize that that particular network that you have isn't serving you in the way that you were looking to be served at that time? So that's what I would say.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. For me, I would say in my Nigerian accent that you are healing me this night. You are healing me this
Thank you.
night. I'm telling you. Thank you so, so much. So let's look at this question. What does gain truly look like for a woman?
Okay. Um, I this kind of like coincides with my healing analogy that I like to use of like recognizing that you're on the path. But I think after having so many experiences of self-awareness, I think it places you on a map of your own. And after you've recognized this journey and you're using the tools in your backpack, um, I feel like that's when you're able, because like I can't define what gain can look like, because that looks like so that's very different for everybody. Everybody's gain is different, and I think that's all. Gain is technically kind of tied to purpose, kind of what you believe your purpose is, and then the gains that come from it. But like I'd say, okay, I'll go back to like biblical analogies here. But I think gain is recognizing that you're on that path, and then being able to also recognize the fruits that are in there along the path. And I won't define what those fruits are, again, what those gains are, but I think it's being able to identify the fruits, identify the good things, and that in itself is a gain, because a lot of people can't, are not, or may not be in a place where they could even identify those things. And so, without telling someone what gain is, I just think it's being able to identify those blessings in the midst of whatever your situation is.
Wow. Thank you so much. Last last year, I after bearing so much, burden from my past. I'm an African immigrant living in Canada and everything, and being I said I became a mother very early on in my early 20s, but I knew that I was carrying baggages of pain, of childhood pain, and pain emanating from neglect, from I came from a broken home, from my parents were already and all that, and that trickled into my adulthood, and believe you me, into my 30s, I felt restricted. I still felt like a child. That there was this. I said something that there was this room in my life where the 8-year-old, 9-year-old girl, because back home I had gone to become to work as a maid at the age of 9. So there's just this room that 9-year-old girl still sits. It's even into my 30s, my mid 30s. I'm 43. I'm going to be 44 this year, but even up to my 35, 36 years of age, I would go back as an adult and try to suit that 9-year-old girl and try to comfort her. But she was bitter. She had complaints. She had, that pain in her.
Yeah.
And last year, I said to myself, I said, oh, enough is enough. You need to heal, from your childhood
Mm.
pains and trauma and everything. And I decided to, put it into a book. So I got a ghostwriter. Unfortunately, I got someone back home who we go attend the same church, and he's
Mhm.
a guy, a man. And by the time the process of giving, it was through the process of giving interview and everything, and by the time the process was so emotional for me. There was when we were writing some of the chapters, I was in tears. I was shaking because the pain that I tried to bury is, I mean, numerous. But I healed to an extent in that state. But now the question is, at the end of the day, the guy said, "Oh, this is too much for me. I can't publish this. This is too much. It's way too loaded with pain and burden. I can't. I don't think I can publish it." So now that takes me to my question. This my next question. Just give me a minute. So that takes me to my next question. How prepared is the society? It's like, is society ready for women who are healed, not just
Mm.
helpful?
Yeah, not
Women, how
helpful.
prepared is the society for women who are on the journey of healing, who really desire healing? I got that response, and as I speak to you now, I was supposed to have launched the book in December. That was on my birthday, but I don't have the book because someone felt that my healing process was not something that you know they were ready to listen. So how prepared is society for the woman who craves healing? Not the woman who is just helpful, but the woman who craves healing. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I mean, I think based on your story that you just shared just now, like society isn't ready. Like I laugh as I say that, and it is unfortunate. I laugh because we constantly reach this point within my line of work of that, like society isn't ready for the person that is healed or the person that wants more for themselves, that wants to no longer be in a position of hurt and hardship. Um, and so with that, like I wouldn't say wait for society, don't wait for society to catch up or for society to be ready for you to be on that journey. It's up to you, as you did, to decide, okay, I am ready to move on, or I am ready to work through this thing and to do that. And it's unfortunate that society is not ready, because then you see those gaps when it comes to programming or to services, different kinds of support. That's where those gaps kind of fall in, because they ain't ready. But at the same time, given that they aren't ready, I feel like it's more of a push for you to do it for yourself, and to find like-minded individuals who are also going to add to you, or to on that journey for themselves as well, and y'all could be your own network, and support each other, because you know society is going one direction, and it's important for us to band together with folks who are on the same page as us, who hold the same values, and then picking a direction to move forward. And in this case, that is healing. And sorry, was there a second part to that question that I gave
So,
not?
um, yes, I said it's more like saying that a woman who is healed, not a woman who is being helpful. You
Mm-hmm.
understand? Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Please, our audience, you can drop your questions if you have questions for our speaker tonight. I don't know about our audience, but you are healing me this night.
Thank you, Rosemary.
You're helping me on boarding. You are helping me. Maria said something. Maria, hi Maria. Maria said something. Maria said, I love the concept of recognizing the journey of healing. And I'm going to take our next question from Maria's comments.
Mm-hmm.
When I realized that I needed to heal, and and not just continue to stay this way.
Yeah.
I had serious battle with myself. I had battles with, like, saying, oh, what if in this my journey to healing, people feel offended, family, friends, or who are going to be mentioned, or who have played one part or the other in the pain or the trauma that I bear as a person, you know. And that was actually one of the things that the ghostwriter that I had, employed his service mentioned. Oh no, I don't want to say that it's going to affect your spouse, or it's going to affect your sister, or it's going to affect your this and all that. So my question is, recognizing, when you recognize, that healing is a journey. Um, is it safe to say that you have to agree or tell yourself that you might go on this journey alone, that you may not get help, or you may not get support from people who you feel you need this support from?
Yeah.
Is it safe to say that?
It kind of is, like, as you were
Mm.
saying that you were
Yeah.
told that some people may get offended or some people may feel away, and
Mm.
my immediate response to that was like, tough
Yeah.
cookie. Like, they're not the person that's on this journey, or they're not the person that experienced this hardship. And
Mm.
we do see this a lot, and kind of going back to what I mentioned, like the taboo of asking for help. It's because of like the lateral violence that can exist within our relationships. I think of survivors of gender-based violence who are in a situation where they can't lean on the person that may be closest to them to help them heal, because the person closest to them might have been the reason as to why they are healing in the first place. And so unfortunately, yes, the journey of healing is one that begins on a lonesome venture. It's one that begins with just you. But I know for a fact that if not in your immediate circle, if you don't have that type of support or individuals who's going to help pour or add into your journey, or even empathize or seek to understand your journey, there is somewhere else that you can go where you will find somebody. It may start alone, but it won't end that way.
Yeah. Mm. Thank you so much. So I have before we please kindly drop your questions. It's a very emotional topic this night, and please, I want you to just talk to that 9-year-old girl in me that is still hiding, and that is still in that closet of pain.
Mhm.
Just what do you have to say to her?
What I would say to 9-year-old Rose, I would say to her, like, first and foremost, like, I apologize for any hardship that you would have experienced that no one may have seen or understood at the time. But what I can say is that the Rosemary of today is doing you justice. Know that. And so it's unfortunate that those things happen and that those hurts can't be immediately taken away. But I know for a fact that Rosemary today is doing everything that she can. And I won't say to make it up, but to completely rewire and change what the reality is today and how you feel about yourself today or how you feel about your circumstances in this today, like in this now.
Thank you so much. So I want to say now, please now rephrase the question.
Hmm.
Give us three things that we as much older women can do to help the young girl.
Three things.
Yeah.
I would say, first and foremost, identify what it is that that little girl was looking for somebody to notice or to do to give justice to whatever happened. So understand or identify what it is you are working towards, what it is you're looking to heal in the first place. Otherwise, you just, giving off effort everywhere but where you should be going. Um, the second thing is find a support person or a support group that can help you. Community is everything. And I said it as somebody who like moved to this province not knowing very much people. And I had my worries about, okay, well, oh, this is such a hardship, and like I don't know how I'm gonna like finding people wasn't even an option in my head to help support me along the way, but those people organically came. And so the second one, not that you, I guess, yeah, you have to find the person, but also know that the right people will find you as well, to help support you along this journey. And the third thing I would say is just understand that that journey of healing is not linear. Like it's not like you start this day and then a year from now you're there and then you're here and no. The healing journey is this. Like it has no sense of, up and up and it keeps going that direction. No. It's not guaranteed to be a straight path. And so in recognizing that, give yourself grace. Like give allot yourself at least that as you are. Kandisha said it best. Hey cousin, never give up. Like but yeah, like understand that, you will have the people around you. You've already identified what it is you're looking to heal. And the only way to do that is to continue moving forward, to continue pouring into that.
Mm. Thank you so much. I don't know if I have asked this question, but can I say, what does a healed woman give differently?
I
So,
like this
so,
one.
so she knows, oh, I'm actually healing. What
Uh,
does she give differently?
I got this one. So she gives her time differently. She gives her time in a way that serves those around her, but also has allocated time for herself. And like I'm sure you've heard it before, like you can't pour from an empty vessel, and we know it's true. Like it's a reason why they tell you to put on your face mask first before you start helping somebody else, because you cannot give from a place of depletion. It's just impossible. Like, well, some might argue otherwise, but like it's hard to give fully if your cup is not full. And so that time is going to be given differently. And this is a phrase that I've said myself a lot, but I've also encountered it with other people, of that you have to be good, as in show up for yourself in order to be good for others and show up for
Mm.
them. And so again, if only doing that partially, that's what's going to get reflected, partial. And the help the help won't be much if it's partial. And then I like just reminding folks of, or not, yeah, I'd say I'm reminding folks, but I find that you sit or you exist within your feminine energy differently. Like you're able to go about finding different ways to do that. And like I won't go through the rabbit hole of what all that entails, but I think it first requires you permissioning yourself to discover and explore and understanding that um, you know, there's many different ways to go about existing within that energy in a healthy way. Um, and therefore that will come across differently. That is what's going to be given differently. That soft feminine energy, not only in ways that you serve yourself, but in the ways that you serve others. And it's going to be noticed. Like I know that for a fact. But yeah.
Sincerely speaking, I do not want this night or this discussion to end, but unfortunately, we have to go. Jazz, thank you so much.
Thank you so
I
much.
want to say sometimes when I see you, I love the life you carry. I love the life that you exude. I tell you everything. I said I just love Jazz. I just love you so much because you are like a ray of sunshine. When
Oh,
anyone that
thank
comes
you
across,
so
no, that's the truth.
much.
Anyone that comes across you, you have that life to give. You just exude brightness and all that. I want to say a big thank you so much. I've known you now for going on 2-3 years, and I have been blessed by what you do and by who you are. Thank you so much for doing this. I do appreciate. Thank you so much. And everyone, I know that you enjoyed tonight's discussion. Topics like this are usually very emotional. They're not topics that that requires all the razzmatazz and everything. They are topics that it's a topic that requires reflection, absorption, and action. So I want to enjoin you to please go back, listen to this, and start your healing. You need healing Jazz is a believer, a Christian. So she kept saying, they said healing is the children's bread. Healing is your bread. You need it. Thank you so much. And I am Rosemary Henry Eze. Until I come your way next week, Saturday, I say stay blessed. Thank you, Jazz.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Thank you.